Welcome back, everybody. It is time for what is arguably, the most important match of the summer split season. Not the summer split playoffs. Those are separate. Those are coming really, really soon. But before we get to that, the most important match of the summer split season, it is that tie-break best-of-1 battle for first place. Detention FocusMe taking on the Rascal Jesters. We kind of knew it was going to be these two quite early on, probably after the third or fourth rig. The writing started to get written in the sand, and today we're going to put that exclamation mark down in at midnight. My man, how keen are you for this?
Very much so, Formal. These two teams have both looked brilliant. DFM coming off what was a slow start with their proper lineup, right? We talked about it at the very start of the season. Gang finally joining the DFM lineup, making what is meant to be, the five pieces of Exodia coming together. Well, it started off like Exodia Necron. Why? But it did end up becoming the full real deal. Coming out for DFM, of course, Rascal Jester, though, no slouch. A brilliant start for them and a really strong team all in all. And if I'm looking at the two teams, I'm just going to start looking at, well, where am I seeing the weaknesses? I think the only really big weakness for me is the difference potentially in the jungle pool of the junglers, because Steel has that shaker that no one else has touched for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, I don't really expect to see the Shaco making a giant resurgence, though, back into this tournament at all. I think Shaco has come and gone, particularly with the bans that have started to hit LeBlanc, and that being realistically the best synergy we've seen for it. Not at this stage. I think we are going to be looking more at convention, but I am kind of curious right now, and going to play a little bit into your Yu-Gi-Oh game right now. Do you think, is there any chance, any way that Rascal Jester logo is named Bugsy right now and is willing to just rip up that combo and throw it into the sea? Because the way how I see it, and with the way how DFM has been playing, that seems to be the only way to be able to beat them.
Yeah, I could just straight up correct you and say the name you're looking for is Weevil Underwood, but
Weevil, that's
yes,
it. Sorry,
Bugsy.
thank you. Thank you.
Bugsy is what we're looking for.
Look,
Bugsy.
okay, all I remember is green hair, bug deck. There's Bugsy, right? The Bugsy. Just
I
Magic's
I
better
can't.
than Yu-Gi-Oh! Midnight. Magic is better
How
than Yu-Gi-Oh!
how dare you? I know we should be focusing on the first one here. So let's we can have this argument once the camera is off, because this ain't gonna be a
True.
clean
Oh,
fight
we
for them.
will.
But looking at our two teams, because I think there's probably a bit more of a focus, is of course the Rascal Jester and DFM matchup here. I feel like the middle lane and the jungle, the mid jungle duo combination, is going to be so critical here. And the
Hmm.
reason why I say that is Steel, of course, really strong, has a few unconventional things hidden in the back pocket, and we know that he is an aggressive jungler. But on the opposite side, Hachamecha, I think, has done really well this season. I'm really impressed, more so with his pathing than anything else. Like, this ain't that he's not doing well, but I think his pathing is really good. So the question will be then, Steel, where can you make your ganks where Hachamecha isn't waiting for you for a counter gank? Because if Steel gets counter ganked, I think he's screwed. But he needs to make
I,
sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it's not just Steel that would kind of feel the pressure in that situation. It's been the Steel Arya connection that's really helped enable Detonation Focus Me control so much of the map. And I am in agreement with you. Hachimacha has been so good with the pathing, not just because they know where to be, but they also has just been such an incredible player at sort of reading their opponent's movements and finding some of the best sort of counter engages we've seen thus far. However, that could only deal with the mid lane. But if you're putting yourself in that situation, then you're ignoring sort of the other head of the Hydra that DFM has, and that is who we talked about before, that sort of missing piece of the puzzle that came back mid-season in Gang. The team's decision making since the return of Gang, I think, was felt across the entire LJL, and they kind of started to explode into be this juggernaut at that stage. You don't win 11 games in a row with one player returning for no reason. And Udapon, as a side result, has also looked arguably up there with some of the best AD carries as well. And if you're putting all your effort into shutting down Steel, shutting down that mid lane, it does kind of leave that bot lane perhaps a little bit more exposed. Not that Secret and SSoul are slouches by any stretch of the imagination, but I do feel like you can't put all your eggs in shutting down one of the baskets just because DFM have too many threats across the board.
And the Rascal, well, you say that, but look at Rascal Jester's banning coming through here. Double mid lane ban affected because Aurelia could more than capable going to Recap's hand. Of course, Kanatu did have their full squeezed a bit, as well as Pick Ban has rapid fire through a little bit of a DFM ones though. The Aphelios, what a surprise, and of course the Gwen and the Ziggs. All really popular meta picks, but the Varus, you know, that really, really strong marksman down in the bottom lane picked up for Udapon. But I love Rascal Jester's response. Look at the Leona so they can engage on him whenever they want. It pretty much forces DFM to lock in Thresia, and the aggressive Xin Zhao is what I think Hachimecha needs to bring to the table for this game. So Rascal Jester reading the play and saying, alright, let's see what you've got, and surely you lock in Thresia.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to commit to the Braum, a little bit of something different. I mean, the thing about DFM is they will always find ways in these picks in advance to try and spice things up and maybe go against convention. This tells me you see 3 bands dedicated towards that mid in the jungle. Perhaps, you know, Rascal Jesters are thinking to shut down that mid-jungle synergy like we were talking about before. So let's take our aggressors and put them elsewhere. Renekton, also a surprising champion to go through. That's going to get snatched up as well for the side of DFM. And this could be a situation where the side lanes may have more of that earnest. Now, the other thing I do quickly want to bring up, what I find interesting and exciting about the way how this pick and bans is going is the key players are getting champions that they kind of can be known for. Granted, Udapon has been putting in a lot of hours and a lot of matches on that Aphelios as opposed to the Varus, but the Varus still very much well in that wheelhouse. Hachimacha on that sort of brawly, sort of looking to sort of find those counter ganks type jungler in that Xin Zhao. I feel like where we're going so far, these players are getting the champions that they want.
Yeah, and even Rascal Jester's Jhin, which I'm not a huge fan of, can do well. He has the range to try and match out with the likes of the Varus. And of course, we do know can work well with Leona when the Leona is CCing the correct target. So hopefully that works out better for Soul and Secret than it did for Hollow in that bottom lane last matches. The other thing is, of course, the second round of bans comes through is the Renekton is a flex pick. It could go to Arya, and that can kind of maybe hurt Recap and Hachimecha's 2-on-2 because the Renekton is infamous for, well, if you gank the Renekton, you're getting double killed. So, gotta always be a little bit careful how angry the crocodile gets if you decide to poke it with a giant stick.
Yeah, it is going to be something that's I'm a little bit worried about because we haven't seen too many situations throughout the season, I feel like, where Ebby has been put in a situation to completely dominate a lane, but we know this is a player that has the capabilities to do so. Kanatu is going to have to be very cautious, I think, in what sort of champion they lock into. I expect that one to be the next pick. I mean, DFM's feeling confident. They're continuing to throw their bans, it looks like, more towards the mid lane. They got rid of what has become both of our favorite mid laner in that Orianna. A little bit sad to see that, as it would have synergized quite well with the Leona and the Xin Zhao, and perhaps setting up a similar composition to what we just saw out of V3. The Gnar instead is what's going to be banned away. No real surprises right there. We've also know what a Gnar can do against an aggressive top laner, and, well, it is going to force the more passive pick, perhaps, as Mundo gets locked in.
Yeah, but I actually love the Mundo here more than the Gnar, because if you can try and match the Mundo into the Renekton can't realistically kill the Dr. Mundo because part of Renekton's combo is the stun, right? Locking them in place, which you just can't do against the Dr. Mundo. So if you lock in this Nidalee, I actually don't like the Nidalee here. Purely because Nidalee is locked in to make an unstoppable 2v2 on the top half of the map between your top lane Renekton and your jungle Nidalee. Because Renekton locks them in place, that spear lands, it's great. Unfortunately, Mundo doesn't care about that. So I'm really worried as Steel brings in another unique champion. What a surprise there, I'm
Yep.
sure. I love the idea of him bringing in a unique champion, but I don't know who this Nidalee's meant to synergize with, other than maybe the Rise in the middle lane. Same theory. Rise locks them in place, Nidalee hits the spear, Nidalee kills them. So it can definitely work. If Recap locks this in, that will be a ballsy play if they go for the Yone there.
I don't think they're going Yone. The Azir seems to make more sense right now. Just try to get that space, or even the Zoe. We were talking about this a little bit in the break, how you kind of want that spacing, perhaps against these teams that could be looking to get into your face and to help enable your more ranged AD carry. And that's what the Rascal Jesters are going to get. They're going to be able to get that Zoe over for Recap. But to go back to this Nidalee, I think it should be worth noting, when it says first pick across the screen, that's not first pick for, Steel this season. No, this is the first Nidalee we've seen all summer long in the LJL. And it's kind of a crazy time to bring it out. So if you're kind of wondering, like we are, why this pick exists, I'm sure Rascal Jesters are probably thinking that same thing. This could be something that they aren't prepared for, and perhaps that unknown is what's going to catch them off guard. Perhaps we're going to learn where exactly this Nidalee is going to fit in. So I'm not completely on board with you and writing it off just yet. However, I will come to that agreement, that Zoe lock-in seems like a very strong response.
Yeah, Zoe is the quintessential, hey, you're a mage, screw you. And the fact that it's a Rise who is forced into that close range, you can really struggle against range matchups. You need to get on top of the Zoe to lock her in place. Like level 4, level 5, it is really difficult. And then we all know what Zoe does in the mid to late game. She pokes you down, you have half health, you enter the fight, you die. And fundamentally, pairing that Zoe up with the likes of the Jin, I'm seeing a very, very familiar setup here from the Rascal Jesters, which is a poke composition. They've done it
Mm,
before, admittedly a lot more committed to. I think it was an Ezreal Yumi in the bottom lane instead of
yeah.
course, the Jin Leona. But fundamentally, it still operates the same way. Recap gets you low, Soul pokes away a little bit, and then when you try and engage the three-man beef ball combo, basically this nukes your health bar down whenever you try and fight your way through. So I like the idea, but we've seen Rascal Jester struggle in the execution of it, especially in the early game. And I don't think that the champion you want to struggle in the early game more than you see the enemy team having a Nidalee, the
Yeah.
no, the queen of early game aggression.
I'm just looking furthermore at this Rascal Jester's comp, and like I agree with you. Like the poke on this comp is insane, but they can also kind of switch it to a pick comp at any given moment as well. Like it's
Hmm.
not just like poking, whittling down, but the ability to furthermore dive in as well. Sleepy Trouble bubble into a Zenith Blade. If you're out of position, you are just gone with the follow up damage that can come through. It is a very dangerous Rascal Jester's comp, is what I'm trying to get at. Whereas when you look at DFM, I think one thing that they might have going for them, I suppose, would be a bit of spacing in team fights. They do have that with the piercing arrow as well as steel spears, as well as just Arya existing and not wanting to go anywhere near that. But that's where the poke elements that you're talking about before for the Rascal Jesters also does come through and in spades. Like this is such an interesting matchup to me. Again, I'm kind of with the AI on this one. I still kind of give that little edge over to DFM just because I feel like the Rascal Jester's margin of error when it comes to finding these right engages. Yes, they can poke for a fair bit, but they're still very solid sustained. And you have the ultimate anti-poke support in that Braum as well. So when they do look for maybe more of those picks and at times perhaps a dive or two, they need to make sure they are spot on because the counter engage and the spacing from DFM could go unmatched.
It could go, but it's got to be played well. And a lot of that, I feel like, is actually not going to be decided in the fights. It's going to be decided in the 5 minutes before the fight. And that's because of
Mhm.
Steel's champion here. Now, we know what they can do when they have access to a bit more of an unconventional champion. We've all seen what he's done with that Shaco. And Nidalee, while her pathing is a bit more conventional than a Shaco's, and we probably won't see any of those cheesier ganks, Nidalee is one of the best early game junglers in the game, without question. Her clear is ridiculously amazing, and her ability to invade, I think, is one of what makes her just such a formidable jungler here. So the question will be then for Hachimecha, where is he being invaded? Or is it going to be a gank? Where does he get a position to catch it? Is he on the right half? Now, of course, the Xin Zhao has also a pretty damn good clearance. The Ebby actually just denies a cannon by body blocking. That's rude.
That's
But
that is. But and to answer your question, I think if you look at the team compositions where you'd have to expect the invades to come from would be the top side of the map, which is why I think Hachimacha actually opted to start on that blue buff and push their way up just in case of that invade. Because if Hachimacha can find Steel when they look for those invades, I think things can go well. And it's more likely Steel's going to want to play around where you're going to have that stronger top side just because of the Renekton Mundo matchup. Well, now we're going to have our first chance of what happens when these junglers see each other, and Arya is the one who steps forward, but Hachimacha says, okay, let's dance. Flash already burnt out as Ebby is making their way down. Hachimacha's already gone, though, because of that Arya damage, and
oh
Steel, along with Ebby, is going to find recap as well. A disaster for the Jesters as DFM strike first.
no! DFM are playing with one of the most aggressive junglers in the game, in Italy, and Rascal Jester decide, yes, we want to handshake this with a Zoe who needs time to scale up compared to the machine gun nature of Arise nice and early. So Rascal Jester, I think they know what's up here. The moment Steel shows himself, Hachimecha immediately backs away, but they say to themselves, look, we've got Arya. If we can nuke Arya down, great. Arya hadn't taken damage. Arya still had summoners. Hachimecha gets locked up, the spear lands, and then Recap just straight up misses the paddle star, which means that you can't even try and make it a trade around to take down Steel. Steel will get the topside Scuttle Crab and pretty much absolute immunity around the rest of the map here. And Hachimecha is going to be playing catch up for the next little bit.
Everyone on Rascal Jesters are going to be playing catch up because Ebby is able to find a kill in all of that as well. And actually, he's going to be a little bit behind, at least until they reset. But then it will be Kantatu who will be on the backside. And then you look at the mid lane. Well, not only is Arya kill up, but also was able to get the double buff off Hachimecha as well. Still able to keep there. So it's like 4 buffs, 2 kills, a K.5 of a gold lead right now. Everything just coming up DFM at the start of this game.
Yeah, and when only 5 minutes into it here is DFM looking to continue this. This is what you need to do as Steel. A late game Nidalee, depending on who you ask, is basically worthless, so you need to get a gank on the bottom side soon.
As they are looking to do just that. Oh my god, just, arrows and spears. I mean, we're talking about the poke that RJ had. DFM definitely is going to have some poke of their own if they're able to get themselves sustained just between Steel and Utapon alone. It's not going to be enough to Warden all in, and Steel is going to continue to just make their way back through the jungle and continue to farm up. Vision around the Dragon Pit actually favors the Rascal Jesters at this stage. However, I don't think it's going to be too long until we start to see DFM start to push back around that Dragon Pit.
Yeah, DFM posturing.
Gang really wants this.
Oh, they got Realm Warp. Arya is actually halfway down the lane there, so they could have just Realm Warped in no issues, and that's why you immediately see Rascal Jester being like, wait a second. They're walking up like they know something we don't. Back the hell up. Let's find out what's going on. Really good, respectful play there from Rascal Jester. They're already behind, and they're not willing to try and make him act another mistake.
I believe it's stop, hey, what's that sound? Everyone check what's going down is the phrasing that they would have liked to use as we take a look up top. It's a song. Come on, man.
Where's that from?
Music is where that's from.
Thank you, Formal. I'd have never figured out that was part of a song. I really appreciate that.
I actually forget who sings it, and that's really bad of me because somewhere in the world, my mom is so disappointed in me forgetting that one. Oh, nice piercing arrow from Unipon connecting on Secret. Follow-up damage not quite there from Gang. This bot lane, a very tumultuous affair right now, but I think we're seeing Secret wanting to be that aggressor, trying to find those avenues, but for every second they're unable to sort of pressure Unipon. That's another piercing arrow that has been able to connect. Perhaps help will come in the form of Hachimacha, as neither team has made any drastic move towards that dragon at the moment. Steel more concerned perhaps in doing what I suspected earlier, and that's invading that top side of the jungle.
Yeah, and this is what I love to see out of Nidalee, right? Nidalee needs to be aggressive early. Kanashi knows what's going on. They're TPing for this. What?
Yeah, they want Kinatu gone because Arya's going to arrive to the scene and, yeah, pick up the kill with the teleport, perhaps use the Realm Warp to get back to lane, maybe lose half of a wave. A beautifully executed gank coming from DFM.
Yeah, a nice aggressiveness coming out as well, and not where I was expecting. I was expecting this in the bottom lane, but instead, they make the play on top lane, Arya grabbing themselves there as well. It's great. 2-0 and 1, 150 gold bounty. But now DFM, Unipon and Gank, they had to know this was coming.
They did know it was coming. Look at the positioning of Steel. Steel's already on their way up. You also have Arya coming down with that Realm Warp still available. The Curtain Call gets the health bars low, but not quite low enough, and you still got to fight your way through that tower. Recap's taking some poke, but no, Arya actually is not going to roam down. Content with just to let this one realistically go, well, nowhere. No one's dead just yet. Flat towards Edison. They're diving in deep. Secret really wants this kill because the backup damage is there and Gang is already gone. Steel will be the next one rooted in place. One more auto will do it coming out of Soul, and that's 2 kills picked up by the Rascal Jesters.
DFM make an uncharacteristic mistake here, and the mistake is bleedingly obvious. You know that there is going to be multiple Rascal members Jesters on the bottom half of the map because you just committed 3 members to the top. It is exchange. You say, okay, we make a play top side, you make a play bot side. Now, the fact that Steel roamed down here does make the reason why Gang and Unipon took so long to get out, it makes sense, right? Like, you forced the back away, even Hachimesh is forced to flash. This is fine. Now, here's the problem. You are still only 3 members on the bottom half of the map here, and there is a Leona at level 6. You have no right to be under this turret. Rascal Jester should know this, but instead they decide to overstay their welcome, and they just get brutally and I think adequately punished for it there. You are not allowed to be on that bottom half of the map when you're focusing on the top, and speaking of that...
Well, yeah, speaking of focusing on the top, we're just going to go ahead and get Ebby another kill. 3-man play up on that top side, but it's why I was so surprised we actually saw Arya back off of that play. The moment Arya backed off of committing down to the bot lane, should have been DFM saying to themselves, okay, we might be conceding some plates here, but I guess they were desperate to try to preserve as much of that tower as possible in that situation. Probably that wave crashing made them think, okay, let's try to push forward, clear this wave as fast as we can, and get out. Speaking of which, Realm Warp and Corrupting Chains for Flash. Interesting trade. I'm sure they're going to be quite happy with it. The cooldown's much shorter on those ultimates as Shelly really wants to go say, hey, what's happening, DFM? That's a nice jungle you have there. Actually, it's boring. I'm going to go back home. The Rascal Jesters kind of seem like cool bros. They're beating up my annoying little brother instead, as this tier will not be able to steal that away. But perhaps they catch a little bit more because Hachimacha is getting jumped upon. Kitatu and Recap, though, they're here as well. Look at that Battlestar damage from Recap. Goodbye, Steel. Although with Emmy and Arya arriving to the scene, the fight still may go DFM's way. They pick up a couple kills on the tail end, and perhaps they turn this into a Rift Herald, although more likely they go back to lane.
Yeah, DFM there, surviving let's just say surviving, making the first step forwards against Rascal Jester. And take a look at this. This is so aggressive. The flash from Gang, the follow-up continue from Evie there, the CC train, no escape there. Crescent Guard was not used by Hachimecha, and that kind of let the engage happen. And then after that, it's just getting run over by superior numbers. Your starter player down. And when you go for one and you are already a man down, well, you can't win. You're always going to fall behind there. As taking a look at the gold here, specifically look at the top and mid lane. 5,000 on both of that for DFM, 3,000 for Rascal Jester. A massive gold difference between the solo laners here. And part of that may or may not, Formal, have something to do with the dive that we saw and the bullying that Kanatu has kind of suffered so far.
Yeah, and I mean, the ability to do all these things do come back to that Nidalee selection. And I do agree with Nightmare right now. When you look at Renekton and when you look at that Rise in the solo lane and when they're put in these enabled situations, they can look absolutely unstoppable. But you also have to look how they were able to get these early advantages to really play to their strengths to begin with. And it does come from Steel and this Nidalee selection. 100% kill participation at 7 at that 12-minute mark is, okay, Arya just kind of stood there and took it. I think was trying to grab Recap and play a little bait. Meanwhile, on the bot side, it's going to be a 2v3 as Hachimacha is around. Should we see a fight break out? Gang going to sit back and keep Unipon protected. Real quick, though, back to my point with that Nidalee pick. I think we're starting to see why it's played, and it is to try and enable the solo lanes as much as possible. This wave's about to crash, though, and Hachimacha has their eyes set, perhaps, especially with backup arriving in the form of Recap, but no one's committing to the play.
I think the fact that you got Recap down there, you have to commit to the play there. Secret has Solar Flare. You could easily just dive onto it.
Uh-oh.
Instead, they choose to back up. And is the doctor in trouble again? Is that what's going
The
on?
good doctor has taken too many house calls right now and is trying to escape out the back door.
It looks like he can get out. No, he stepped on the trap, but it looks like
Yeah,
unfortunately
he'll
that
be
just don't
fine.
care.
Just keep
Although,
spamming that recall button. You'll get there eventually, buddy. He's finally able to get out of the jungle in one piece, but it comes at the cost, perhaps, of this top brick. Not quite yet. One more wave should be able to do it.
comes at the cost of the red buff, as we're seeing Steel continuing to focus on their solo laning here. And if you ever looked at this game and think, oh, why is DFM? But DFM, couldn't they change their strategy to try and assist Udapon and gang? Put Steel down there. The Braum has great crowd control. Look at the first item that Udapon has purchased. Udapon knows that he's basically just a walking support at this point in the game of how his team wants to tackle it. A first item Umbral Glaive. I don't think I've ever seen an AD carry go for that as their first item.
Yeah. You know what? And I think this was, obviously at this stage when we look at it, this was DFM's play all along. The first priority pick onto the Varus with the Braum with it. Just take as safe a lane as possible. Outside of that one misstep that we saw before, it has been a safe bot lane, and just enable these juggernaut solo laners in Ebby and Arya to take this game over. And at this stage, if you're the Rascal Jesters, you've got to be thinking, okay, we need to find a way to get Soul more involved in this game. We know Recap's got the damage. We saw what those paddle stars can do. How can we get Soul involved? How can we get Soul protected enough and to get the damage to deal with Ebby and Arya? I mean, the range should be there in theory, but it's just going to be a matter of finding those right fights, because again, we go back to that point I was making back at the start of this game. If the Rascal Jesters pick a wrong fight, they're going to get run over. We saw that earlier on the top half of the map. They've got to be so cautious. They've got to be so precise. And when they are put behind right now, that becomes even more dramatic.
And specifically on that point of Soul, it has to be around objectives here. Like, you've just lost your mid tier 1, which is really, really frustrating, because you lose any priority over the Baron and Dragon and stuff, as Dragon is spawning in a minute 40. But now for Soul, it's got to be based around the objectives. Get down to that Dragon, set up with the rest of Rascal Jester, and force DFM to make a call. Either DFM can test the Dragon, which I think they should, or DFM get into a fight against Rascal Jester. Because with Steel, you're on a timer. Because obviously we all know that Nidalee late game is about as useful as Olaf late game. It just doesn't work. Sure, she's got a bit more oomph, and she can assassinate a good target if they're, getting caught out by a spear. But 8 times out of 10, you become a spear bot, a heal bot, and a smite bot. So for Steel in this situation, you have to start accelerating the game a bit more. And Dragon Control, both these teams have got to be abundantly aware. Okay, it's all around the Dragons. 50 seconds, get vision control, try and get that tier 1 in the bottom lane. And Gang, I like how Gang's positioning like he's going to tower dive. Like, I like that posturing, honestly.
I do like that posturing, and though I don't see too much coming from it just yet. I mean, the entire area around the Dragon Pit is controlled by DFM, and now we see Steel and Hachamicha kind of running into each other, but they're not going to be able to go all in just yet. Both these teams really trying to find that moment. As eventually we still see more sieging underneath that tower. Nice little route onto Steel, but the Blasting Cone should take them to safety, as they will back off for now.
Yeah, and DFM, though. Dragon spawning in 5, and DFM, I'd say they're in a great position, but Arya is actually going top side for some reason. I would love... Is this another attempt on the Mundo? Okay, no, he's just stealing himself some KFC. Okay, you know what? That's fair enough.
Yeah, they are, since now the Dragon is going to be started upon at the moment, and it doesn't look just quite like that. I'm going to try to get this name right. I've been struggling a little bit with this one, so I'm just going to try to get it. Hachamecha was not in position to contest that one, and as an end result, DFM do get themselves that first drake.
Yeah, and this is pretty good for DFM. Obviously, as I talked about, the Nidalee is on a timer. You need to get your objectives ASAP, and that is simply just another step forwards for Steel to continue being nice and strong in the later stages of the map with that Night Harvester. Obviously, should probably hit level 11 soon-ish. Probably after Grompo, maybe even the Scuttle Crab after that. And the rest of DFM is starting to get online as well. Of course, you have the Everfrost in the back pocket of Arya, who of course still has the stacking tier of Udapom. And the fact that you've got two tier stacking champions, or with paired up an aggressive jungler like the Nidalee, is putting them in a great position where the next dragon, and maybe even dragon number 3, DFM are going to be in a great position where Rascal Jester have to say, is it worth trying to contest where the Nidalee can probably just basically 1v3 us? So Rascal Jester are going to have to start asking themselves some serious questions. As we're seeing, I like the posturing, but like, just gotta hit the turret.
Gotta hit that turret, and there's no more wave available to be able to do so. Meanwhile, Hacha Mecha is looking to get themselves involved as they kind of get surrounded. Actually, there isn't a little way too deep. Has to try to flash to escape, but not going to be able to get out of this one alive as Ebby's going to continue to chase after them. Another kill picked up by this Renekton, and Rascal Jesters picked the wrong fight on the wrong side of town, or did they? Because now, I mean, Kanatu is all alone up on that top side. Curtain call is going to be played. Gang should be able to block it as Udapon continues to wail on this tower. Oh, here comes the roll-up. They're looking to get right back onto Soul.
What?
He immediately gets caught out by Arya and will go down. Kill secured by Seal Teleport coming through by this Mundo, but he's already nearly dead. He had lost all of his health so quickly, and he's supposed to be the tank. The end result is the Rascal Jesters getting nuked, and DFM are going to be very happy about that.
What an aggressive move by DFM there. Udapon. Oh my lord.
Recap still hurts, Midnight. Recap still hurts.
It does, but still, I want to say what an amazing play out of DFM there. And Arya, I don't know whose call it was. So, how does this start? I suppose is the first question. Well, Hachimecha, I don't know what he's looking for here. He knows that he's outnumbered and just still decides to go for it. Has the flash out of there. One does dodge the spear, but still is just going to go down here. And now Rascal Jester are in full retreat after their jungler just decided to be way too aggro. Now, this is all fine. Look at this. And look at this, the diving on. Suddenly, they can't run away. They can't get past the shield. Gang stopwatches when he does get low. Their damage output from Udapon and Arya is ridiculous.
I've never seen a Mundo lose health that quickly.
No.
Like...
And it wasn't a Mundo that, like, didn't have an item, right? This is a Sunfire Bramble Vest Mundo at that time of the fight there. He didn't have the giant spell that he has in his inventory now, but still. Yeah, that looks about right in terms of damage there. Evie and Arya did damn well on that one. I always feel bad for pro players when I see, like, this stat chart come up, because there's always one player who has the few. There's always one. Like, I think a couple years ago there was an NA player who did like 7 damage, I believe, in a team fight, and it just got memed on for like 2 months solid. So I feel a bit bad, but Kanatu wasn't late to the fight, and even by the time he TP'd in, the fight was over. Like, DFM had already won the fight before it had realistically begun, courtesy of the pickoff onto Hachimecha before it even began.
And by the time he right-clicked his mouse button to move, he is already down 3/4 of his health as well. I mean,
maybe
not much you could do in that situation, as that mid tower is going to go down. It's sort of a walk in, take what we want, and leave situation for DFM. Going to be quite happy. Picking up another solid brick for them. That's going to open up pretty much both jungles as this side, as the mid lane has been blown wide open. And just in time, too, as we got another dragon spawning in less than a minute.
Yeah, and DFM... No way! Oh, I love you, DFM! Rascal Jester has been so looking at Dragon. Do they know?
I don't think they do, especially because you have
Ebby.
Ebby standing around on the ward intentionally, I believe, to make them think that DFM are on the bot side of the map. Surprise, we're up top, and we had just stolen the Baron from right under your nose.
Oh my god, DFM. They pulled back, and Rascal Jester would have made the assumption that DFM are resetting. They're resetting for items. They're resetting for the dragon fight. And so DFM say, hey, turns out, no, we're not. That Baron pickup is massive because now DFM don't even need to fight for the dragon. If they push out their waves, they can basically threaten the tier 2s on the bot side of the map, pull back, take the dragon, and Rascal Jester can't do a damn thing about it. Oh, I'm in awe of that play because now, yeah, Rascal Jester, they're not allowed to contest this.
No, Rascal Jesters are pretty much not allowed to play League of Legends for a little bit unless they want to go absolutely bonkers insane. They do have a Zoe on their team, does fit the character. However, yeah, let's be realistic here. They've just kind of forced to give up another neutral objective. That's going to be the second dragon in favor of DFM. But more importantly, with, again, that mid lane completely in control, that means the jungle pressure is there. That also means that DFM can now use this Baron to really start to push in whichever side lane they choose. At the moment, it's going to be that bot lane, and Kanatu can have a look down there, can throw some cleavers, I suppose, but there isn't too much that the Rascal Jesters can do unless they want to pull that trigger. But as we mentioned, if the trigger isn't pulled correctly, it's not going to go their way.
Yeah, and they only get one chance now for because look at the gold. Basically, they've hit the mark, and we both know what that means when it comes to two. You make one bad team fight, you make one horrid decision, you're done, unfortunately, as Ebby takes a bit of a pounding there, but he'll be fine. Crocodiles are resilient creatures. As DFM continue the season, Rascal Jester, they've got to do something, but the problem is I don't know what they can do, because if you walk too close, you get slapped with a piercing arrow, or you get slapped with a spear. Like, there's nobody. Look at Kanatu. He's lost a third of his health from like 2 auto attacks.
They're in the worst place a team like them can be in, but perhaps they're going to pull their trigger now as we see Secret go in, trying to get to that back line, but Steel is still standing, as too is Arya, as too is Unipon, and they have already found a pick on the Secret. The curtain call will be blocked by Gang. Recap tries to find the plank with the Battlestar, but cannot get the damage on the right targets as Ebby and Gang are taking a fair bit of abuse in that front line. They are going to have to kite that damage out, but as this is happening, yeah, Arya is in the mid lane just continuing to wail away on that inhibitor. They get the pick. They don't get much else. I suppose that's a defense well held at the end of the day, but I mean, Rascal Jesters, they are flirting with disaster.
Yeah, but they had to do something here. Recap and Soul both lost over half their health courtesy of Steel. So they have to go away. They have to basically reset. And here, Rascal Jester, if you let yourself be sieged, you lose. So the moment that they're here, go. Dive into that backline there. Did we get Unipon? Crap, no we didn't. Ari's arrived courtesy of the Realm Warp and suddenly forced to run away. That was a disgusting arrow. Now, the only reason this works out for Rascal Jester is because of Recap here. Gets really nice damage. Soul does amazing work with the ultimate as well, keeping them distance. And you lost one turret and I think maybe 1 or 2 people. That's relatively worthwhile. You can be happy with that one.
Yeah, I think they have to be happy with that one. And it happens when, exactly as I was trying to say, the Rascal Jester's hope is for those few moments where DFM missteps and overextends. That's what I was trying to say when DFM kind of misstepped and overextended a little bit, prompting Secret to go in on that engage. But you're not going to be sure you're going to be able to pull those off, you know, until after it's all said and done. Like, is this an opening or is this a trap? And I suppose sometimes you just have to take your chance, take that risk. Rascal Jesters, they survive at the end of that one, but they didn't win that fight. Let's not kid ourselves. This team is still over 10K down. Perhaps they're going to be looking for a chance to maybe come up on top of another sort of extended play right here. But that's the issue. Just like that last one, it was still a 4v5. Arya just hung out in the mid lane before. This time, Kanatu is going to try to make their way down and maybe disrupt this rise. I still kind of like this Rise's damage. I'm going to have nightmares about what happened last time we saw Kanatu teleport into the range of Arya as the siege continues on 2 fronts. Perhaps this could be an Ebby going in straight onto Recap. Will be slowed down. Counter engage does a good chunk of damage, but nowhere near enough. Still, the curtain call will be dropped. First shot connects. Second shot too. There's no shield for Gang to use, but it doesn't matter. There's a giant health bar instead. Kanatu will continue to zone Arya away.
Yeah, there once again, DFM looking to try force something there. I'm not so sure forcing that one is the best call, purely because yes, you're 10,000 gold ahead, but it's a tier 2 in the top. You don't need to force the fight there. You can just push the wave in and let the Baron siege it out there. You have plenty of time, and because you committed to diving, and then of course Evie was forced to back away, and the long range of Soul and Recap came through. You were actually forced to abandon any prospect of getting the turret, reset, and go for the dragon. So it's just DFM looking overly aggressive, which I'm not against, but you need to temper that aggression there, because if you do walk into a trap or set by Rascal Jester, there is every possibility that, yes, while you've got a massive lead, you don't win, right? Like, we know that even with a massive gold advantage, even with all the territorial positions, traps don't always work. All right, the Death Star, the second Death Star can attest to that. Traps do not always work when they're set up. So you need to be so careful for Rascal Jester. If you're going to take a trade, if you're going to handshake a fight, you cannot do it as a fair fight. There is no honor in handshaking a fight against DFM right now. You need to be tricky. You need to be sneaky, like how DFM secured their first Baron.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not that sneaky and tricky all the time, because that is peak level. That's 10 out of 10 sneak skill, and sometimes you can't get away with 6, 7s, and 8s on those rolls, but that's also when you're not 10k down. So perhaps Rascal Jesters do need to dig that deep into the bag of tricks to go there. I don't know. I still feel like it's got to come from a situation where DFM overextends or missteps for them to find that opening. This is not DFM overextending, by the way. This is just, Gang understanding its limits. Although Recap does hurt, Arya hurts even more, forcing Recap to go golden, but so too Arya does. And now when they come back, already the Zoe is gone, re-engaging fight, and the front line does just enough to keep this Rise alive. Unipon gets credit for the kills, but that's going to do it for this game, Midnight, because it's not just a fight, it's an ace, and it's a 5-4-none. Secret the last to fall as DFM pours through the base and into the #1 seed of the LJL.
And Arya, the poster child of DFM, will be the one who decided, let's just end this. Runs headfirst at the problem there. Even takes the Realm Warp in to have a little bit of fun with the thumbs up, as they will secure first place here at the LJL. DFM made a hell of a run.
DFM do so in a very convincing fashion as well. And look, I'm going to say this one right now. Just want to put it out there. I liked the Nidalee, Midnight. I liked that Nidalee a lot.
Yes, and in hindsight, me questioning an unconventional pick from Steel was a bad choice to begin with, I feel like. So, you know what we're going to do, Formal? We are going to cut to a short break so I can try and come up with some form of plausible explanation of why I said I didn't like the Nidalee. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be back in a moment's notice for the last little recap of the LJL OU.
And when the dust settles and it's all said and done, we have the team seated alone at number one. Detention FocusMe finish atop the LJL summer split, at least in terms of the regular season. You don't get that trophy, that crown, that prize, that glory, that trip to Worlds without first winning in the playoffs as well. However, for DFM, if you want an argument why this team is coming in as the favorites, I think we can look at this game and see why.
Yeah, and part of it has to be coming on the back of both the jungler and the mid laner coming through here. And I think the first thing to look at is Steel with the first Nidalee that we've seen in the LJL summer split, and what a showing coming through here. Now, I was very skeptical of the Nidalee coming in because
I wasn't.
Nidalee's yours wasn't, yes, I was. Because Nidalee, as a jungler, has two things going for her. The first is that her clear speed and her aggressive tempo is ridiculous. You clear, you can gank, you can invade, you can do whatever the hell you want for the first 25 minutes of the game because she is aggressively strong. After that 25-minute point, however, she falls off quite significantly. So, in the hands of Steel, Steel had to be aggressive, he had to hit the ground running, and boy, did he
Yeah.
coming through there. As for more, I think you're saying 100% kill participation up to that last team fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And even might be afterwards that as well. We didn't really get a chance to see that final stat screen, but yeah, absolutely. Steel was sort of running away with that game, but it wasn't just the Steel shown alone. And yes, we could say Arya as well was that big part. I mean, the damage we saw from the Rise, but we shouldn't be selling short the other solo laner in Evie as well
Mm,
on the Renekton. Again, before the final fight, yeah, Steel had the 100% kill participation, but Evie was still sitting at 10 out of 11. It was realistically, you have two strong solo laners that are able to just bully their lane and enable this Nidalee to play that style that they wanted to do. And it was exactly like as I was predicting sort of more at the start of the game. We're going to be seeing that strong side, top side. And we know where the invades are going to come from. We know where that pressure is going to be coming through. It's going to be going through the top. And unfortunately, the Rascal Jesters, they weren't able to play around the bot side as efficiently as they would have liked. Yes, they got a couple picks sometimes when DFM maybe returned back underneath tower when they shouldn't have, knowing all four members were still there. But outside of that one misstep, they were never able to be proactive enough to really get that
mm,
bot side flowing, to get that dragon control going. They got the first, but then they lost the next all of them. So it just was not really their game to play to their strengths. And it wasn't necessarily because they didn't want to, but it was because DFM didn't allow them to with how strong that top side was.
Because whenever they tried to vote, because whenever they would have looked at, hey, maybe we can test the objective. DFM, they look at Ben Italy, which was ridiculously strong. They look at the Renekton, which was in that perfect spot of he's naturally tanky enough that he can take whatever you throw at him. Oh, and by the way, he's got a ton of damage. And so if you
Mhm.
ever wanted to fight them in that bottom half of the map, not only did you have to survive the poke coming out of the Varus that Unipon was rocking, but you had to survive the machine gun rise. You had to get through them somehow, survive the assassination from Vanillity, survive the Renekton basically trying to turn you into a 3 a.m. snack. And that's a real arduous journey for a team that fell behind at that about what 10-15 minute mark, and it escalated so quickly, formal, that I think at like what 23 minutes, it was a 10k gold difference.
Yeah,
And that is kind of the difference between, the first place DFM and the second place Rascal Jester.
and that's the scary thing to take note. This
Yeah.
was our number one versus our number two seed, and that was such a dominant show of force by DFM. I mean, they are coming into these playoffs as clear favorites. Now, that performance we saw earlier in the day, though, from a certain Axis team, might have you thinking, well, maybe it won't be that biggest cakewalk. And we know Rascal Jesters can rise and have beaten
Mm.
DFM in the past. So it's not as if we're still done right at now, DFM going to Worlds. We still got to play through some best of series and get us through a playoffs. But when you're able to bust out new champions that haven't before seen play, when you're able to uh, essentially get such dominant solo laners in a draft phase, have those still be available for you, and then not only get sort of these picks, but then play around them near perfectly. It does make you sort of think, okay, what can be done to stop this team? And right now, well, I'm very happy it's not my job to actually have that answer.
I was about to say, are you sure you want to try and answer that for me? Because I'm pretty sure the
No,
analysts of the other teams get paid big bucks to try and work that problem out.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Um,
you know what? If you don't tell them I don't have the answer, just tell them that they need to pay me, and I'll give them the answer. Then now we got. So I don't give that
ah,
knowledge for free. All right. Yeah, you gotta pry it out of me.
sort of.
But still, I don't want to write off the Rascal Jesters just yet. Obviously, we know what this team can be capable of. Granted, they won't have their selection of opponent quite like we will be seeing DFM
Mm.
having when it comes to that stage of the semifinals. DFM in that number one seed, all the advantages are going to be in their favor. But soon we will be having a complete playoff picture at hand. And I have to ask, of these six teams, I would ask you who you think is going to win, but I think the answer is obvious. So who do you think realistically is going to have the best chance to perhaps upset this dominant DFM side?
Honestly, again, everyone expects the answer of Hawks because I put the Hawks down for everything. And but if I was to seriously look at the other five lineups and say who do I think has the best chance to throw DFM off, I'm actually looking at Axis here. And I'm not saying that because, hey, they performed really, really well today. But Axis has a clear identity of, okay, when I think of Axis, how does Axis win? Axis wins through Honey. We witnessed that earlier today against the likes of V3. And if Axis are able to get a really good draft, I think they actually have a really good shot at it. We know that Honey's capable of most of the hyper carries that are relatively popular right now. Um, and even their top laner is willing to basically be the blunt instrument that a good top laner, in last game Cog, in this case it would be the likes of Ebby, it just throws himself against and survives. So yeah, I would say Axis probably has one of the best chances to throw DFM off their game, but it's still a hell of a task, right?
I mean, I think that's a better answer than mine, which was airport security on their trip to Worlds, but we'll see where we go from there. Because I don't know. They look pretty tough to beat right now. That to me looks like the team. On that note, though, our tiebreakers are done and dusted, but the playoffs start this Sunday night, or well, Sunday
Mm.
day if you're watching from the EU. Sunday morning, I believe, if you're from NA. Sunday night, though, if you are in the countries most, I think, relevant to the LJL being Japan and, of course, Australia, as we share the same time zone. Lucky us. So it's going to be exciting to watch for sure. You're going to want to check in. If you want this English casting, well, please, please, please drop that follow both here and on Twitter. Stay up to date. Not only do we provide commentary for these games, but there's podcast side content as well. A whole bunch of fun stuff. I mean, it is a pretty sweet gig we got going on right here. So check us out. On behalf of Midnight and myself, as well as Reed, who was doing the production for us, a big heartfelt thank you to everyone tuning in. Until next time, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you on the Rift.